my 12-year-old daughter and her friends planning what they're all going to wear the next day to school. And
then I show up in pink.
Yeah, I did. I think so. I got the.
Rachel, I
email
have
that
on
said
the
I
same
got
color
them, so in my app.
Okay.
Just have to spend an hour figuring out how to use the app again.
Something.
Always.
I'll wear salmon. All right. Good afternoon, commissioners, and over to you,
I hope so.
Chair Harrington. Commissioner Rogers should be back in the room momentarily.
Okay, welcome everyone to our June 1st roundtable. Holy smokes, it's June already.
Yep.
Shazam, here we are. So we had an updated packet. So we'll just dive right into it and help one another along the way. As part of the meeting kickoff, before we go into the whole rolling agenda and informational updates, I would like to take the opportunity to sync up on a few things. First, we have all members of the board. Hello, Commissioner Rogers. All members of the board have received a letter authored by Metro Councilor Juan Carlos Gonzalez of District 4. And it's with regard to community concerns that he is hearing with regard to some of our shelter siting of some types in various neighborhoods. So my questions to you is, did any of you receive any phone calls from him in advance to receiving said letter?
The only communication I got was from you sharing that letter. I hadn't even gotten the letter.
I don't think it went to Roy.
The letter it went to Pam and
the
I.
letter went to the three of you, and I made sure it went to the full commission.
Got it. Yeah. I did not receive a phone call from Juan Carlos. I do know that Marnie and just talked with him this morning. So,
Commissioner Fye, anything?
No, Chair Harrington, I didn't, no calls from here.
Okay. Okay. Marnie, would you like to share any info from your meeting with him today? Oh, so you weren't able to join that meeting after all.
went longer.
Okay.
Chair Harrington, the board, Marnie Kyle, one of the ACAs. I did have the opportunity to meet with Victor. Jess and I met with Victor and Juan Carlos this morning, and I would say that the meeting went very well. He expressed the concern. I mean, first of all, he was very appreciative of what we do, and a lot of compliments that Washington County is really leaders in how we're providing services for homeless populations. He did share that he has been hearing from constituents in Aloha as well as Cornelius and others in his district about our shelter siting. And he just was asking to understand, to gain a better understanding of our process. And we talked through that. Almost everyone, the first thought is always, can't you engage the community before you identify a site? And we talked through that. And I think that we came to a very good place at the end of the conversation around how we're doing things, why we're doing things. Talked a little bit about that, you know, we're trying to make some of our material more understandable to average people that are looking on our website, and that we were working on that, and we would share information as we developed better tools, communication tools. But I think overall, the conversation went really well. He was appreciative of the time. He was appreciative of the work that we've done, and seemed to have a better understanding. Also, the map that we shared with you, Chair Harrington, that shows shelters kind of across the county is something that he indicated would be helpful as well, because there's this narrative out there that we're only citing shelters in poor Latino neighborhoods. So I think that was a helpful conversation.
Yep, and that information is available on our website, has been available on our website, and we will continue to offer more information in our website and in community meetings. I just hope he and his staff will make room for picking up the phone with their peer elected officials. So thank you very much for your timely meeting with them. I know that you were challenged to do so at the same time as having a peer-to-peer elected official, and it just didn't work out this time. Yep. Thank you.
Catherine, if I could comment, go ahead, Pam. if you want.
I was just going to say, so the board knows, I was going to try to attend that meeting this morning. I had a doctor's appointment that went longer, so just a little shoulder issue.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Sorry, I don't mean to be insensitive about your soul. No, if I could just follow up with that, and this, Marnie, you provided me with this at my request. There's two documents that actually, I think, give much more clarity to the conversation. And I just read those. I might have read them before because they're documents that we have kind of discussed as a commission historically. This particular community guidelines expanding shelter programs with equity is a March 31, 22 document. This document is a Washington County Supportive Houses Alternative Shelter Program scope of work. And I think to me that one's also very important because it gives much more clarity on the responsibility of our partners with the pods. And I think it would help the neighbors to be able to have access to this, at least so they would see what we're doing. And so I would encourage everybody on the commission and anybody else that they get those two documents. I can certainly provide them to you if you don't have them.
There's actually another one too that I would add to that set that is available on our website, as well as at least one of the other ones you mentioned. And it's I think it's under the moniker of hang on a second, the good neighbor policy with open door, what we're now referring to as our supportive neighborhood plans. And this particular one is from the Hillsborough Safe Rest Pod on 17th. And so it does a really good job in all the different sections, but the code of conduct one, I think, having been in the listening session for the Aloha Methodist Church Safe Rest Pod site, really helps address some of the fears that people have allowed themselves to feed on or feel. So yeah, our staff is looking at how to augment the information on the website and to help organize it and also refer people to it.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll just keep trying.
Yeah.
And Jerry, also, after the last board meeting, Marnie sent this document out to all of us. So it's in your email.
So, yeah, and I would encourage you to read it.
Absolutely.
Because we get a lot of that stuff.
Remember when we were talking about Elm Street?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, actually, and I
was like,
appreciate
"But
that.
see,
But I really like the scope of work one because to me it was much more detailed from the standpoint of specifics. And so, and the document that you just had,
Yeah.
I'd like to see that as well. So just let me know where I get that.
Megan, it's right on our website. I'll make sure. Megan.
Okay, thank
I
you.
think I sent it
I didn't see that one if you
anyway.
did.
Yeah, we
I-
can get it. to
I could have
you.
missed that one. but
And-
Thank you, Mark.
And just for awareness, I think everybody's aware, but the city council in Cornelius is going to be hearing from community members. And so Jess and I are at the request of Peter planning to attend that meeting on Monday. I believe the meeting starts at 7, but Peter was going to confirm that. And he's asked us just to be there as a resource so that he can point community members that we are the implementers of these programs and can answer questions outside of the meeting. So he specifically asked that we not do a presentation, but that we bring written information. So that's the plan for Monday. just for awareness. I'm not sure if it's made the calendar quite yet because we just kind of firmed things up this morning.
Yeah, I saw that, but I thought there was a presentation because I was considering either zooming in or being there,
Yeah.
whichever one was.
We were told this morning by Peter, he would prefer that we not do a presentation. We're giving some talking points to their council chair, president, because the mayor is going to be absent.
Okay.
So board members, it is standard practice that if elected body or an elected official writes a letter to another, that there is a acknowledged written response. And so I'm wondering how we would like to proceed with responding to his letter.
My comment would be, it's simply to thank him. It's obviously the whole gist of when I read it was that he's responding to some people and he's done his duties. Wrote us a letter, so thank you for your comments. I mean,
And thank him also for getting better informed about our countywide approach.
yeah, I'd make it simple, a couple lines.
Yeah.
So Marnie, couldn't you, since you sit in on that meeting, could you craft that, just that very general response that you just heard from here? That we could do that. And I don't know, Catherine, do you want to do that from you?
It didn't go to her.
It didn't go to her originally, but
I've responded to him by email twice, pointing out information that is readily and easily available. I just want to make sure that he gets a written response.
I'm happy to work with Megan. Megan, we're two of the three. So let's, and we can reference the fact that he met with Marnie, and we can also maybe say it'd be nice if we got a phone call if you have any concerns. So I'm not about just putting that little piece in there.
Commissioner Fye?
Thank you, Chair Harrington. I was going to recommend that, I know the letter, I was kind of confused actually myself, but I think I sort of reasoned that his district aligns with Commissioner Willie, myself, and crosses over Commissioner Trees.
And me.
And
me.
obviously, and hence
And
you,
me.
that's exactly. But I reasoned that, I think that might have been overlooked on that side, that you're the whole county's chair. But what I was going to recommend is that we sent a board letter explaining the direction of the county. That would be my preference, that we sent a letter from the board, which obviously have signature from the chairs. So I would recommend one letter rather than, and we can have the staff between the three of us that he went to the letter and Daniel, we can have the three staff work on that with Marnie. But I think it needs to be a board level that this is a decision that we've made as a board, and this is the task and the direction we give to our staff, and this is where we're heading, rather than district-based commissioners responding individually. So that would be my.
I do think that he was very clear in his letter that he's responding to constituent feedback in his Metro Council district. So in that regard, I'm very comfortable with the three of you putting together a joint response, just CCing Commissioner Rogers and I on that, as well as the Metro Council president. I think it would be a bit much to have your letter summarize our comprehensive approach.
Well, and Commissioner Fye, Marnie already met with him and Jess. So, you know, I think that I don't want to hit him with a hammer.
Yeah, acknowledge that he made the time and our staff was responsive. You know, it's unfortunate that one of us couldn't be there, but onward home. Great.
Yeah, and actually, from my standpoint, I didn't realize that the letter was not directed to you two until you and I were sitting down the other day. And I looked at it a little bit more closely, so I'll pay closer attention to make sure that anything that comes in like that will be forwarded to the entire commission.
Yep, no worries. Great. So the next thing is the request from AOC for to get a county response to their AOC General Fund Due Survey. So I drafted a response from us and it's due on Wednesday, June 7th, since I will be departing tomorrow for the CWS trip. And this relates to the second of two special budget finance committee meetings that the District 8 chair, which is Commissioner Treese, attends. And I've been invited to attend these two meetings because I'm one of the chief instigators in pointing out the weaknesses of the new structure. So I gleaned information from my emails to you in having done the analysis and our two letters this year. And hopefully cleaned up my language so there was no snarkiness whatsoever.
Is there anything left after?
Hello?
No, it's
Did
just,
crap come out?
I would, no, not at all. It's not in there at all. I was just finding it a little fatiguing to be mentioning this yet again. So, but I didn't put that in. So, I also shared the draft with Chairs Smith and Vega Peterson as well.
Have you heard back from them?
No, everybody's just super busy with budget and
So you haven't talked to Chair Smith?
no, I tried to, but she had to cancel out of today's phone call. So.
I think what's important about this from my perspective is, first of all, I really appreciate Catherine doing the work on this. And we sat down yesterday at our regular check-in and went over all the different pieces and talked about kind of the frustration of this. But I do think it's important that you all feel comfortable, Commissioner Fye, Rogers, and Lily, that you're happy having your name on this, because that's our thought is that it comes from the board, not just from those of us that are working on this project.
I think I don't have a problem attaching a name. It's more complex in all of this, and it has to do with the, and you know all better because you guys are involved, but each county is structured different from the small to the big and what they think they're getting out of it. So is this a solvable? I mean, our letter and conversation, is it solvable? You're saying?
I think we can get it better.
It can be more.
It can be improved.
For 1 year, or is this kind of going?
No, structurally.
Okay, you think that'll happen? Okay, all right.
Well, I think 80% of me thinks it will. How's that?
Yeah. Well, I don't dispute it. I just, it looks to me like, they're gonna shine that on that and say, sure, that makes sense, because we want the revenue like they did last year. So maybe I'm wrong. You guys have an insight.
Well, I don't think, I really believe that there was not an awareness of the inherent flaws in the model that had been designed. So I think that that's what we're trying to point out, and that's what we're trying to address. So, but the other thing that the chair and I discussed yesterday is that I find it really interesting that there's a lot of questions about revenue, but not much on the expense side. So we're, we're pointing that out too. So
I did add the new sections for general comments on page 6, as well as on page 11. On page 11, I did not include it wasn't conscious. I just wasn't referring to my notes. Further information about our budget circumstances. And so you might consider
what we've been looking at.
Yeah, and expanding on that in either of those boxes. Because they don't, you know, I summarized it too short.
I will take a look at it, but I guess, like I said, we need to get this back to them by the 7th, which is next Wednesday.
So.
So you're okay?
Same.
Yes,
Yeah.
just, Megan is not included on this communications. I'm gonna forward that to her.
I'll make sure. Megan and I will work on it together.
Yeah, I want it printed so I can look at it. I did read the survey actually before Catherine filled it out. Okay,
There you go.
thank you very much.
Ask and you shall receive.
Nafisa?
I'm good.
Feel free to polish the language. Pam.
Oh, no. I know.
Okay, the last thing I just wanted to bring to your awareness is I have called down to the full commissions for Columbia County and Clackamas County to make sure that each commissioner is personally invited to our CFTLC District 3 meeting Friday, July 14th, 2 to 4 here. And Commissioner Willie, if you want to invite CFTLC Chair Yamamoto, I mean, if he wants to come, why not? So I also included all 3 county commissions on the email as well. And noting that this was the follow-up from the annual meeting in November. So
Okay,
I'm looking forward to seeing everybody just in person for once. So going from there.
well, and just to tag along on that, next week, while we have a couple people at JPAC and DC, I'm in Sisters at the Board of Forestry, and Megan and I have been working on talking points. I'm told I'm probably going to get 1 to 3 minutes, so pretty
Knock
pretty
yourself out.
short. Yeah, I'm not going to follow Commissioner Treese in getting the ding, but it is tough to consolidate a conversation like this in 1 to 3 minutes. So,
Yeah. So
so
let
we're
them
gonna do
know
that.
the meeting.
Yes.
We're making our best efforts. So, and appreciate Mike Wilson for being open to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
Okay.
talked to him at that annual meeting in November. So,
Okay.
cool.
Yeah, we're you're about the only one that's in town, aren't you? Next week.
So,
Holding down the fort. Speaking of which,
I got some
We
ideas.
can blame you for everything then.
we need to appoint a pro tem. Ta-da! She has revealed
Is there-
herself.
Is there a crown associated with this? I just want to make sure I know. Nafisa, are you
Yeah.
going to be around too?
No,
She's
she's
a
in
JPAC.
DC.
Oh, that's right. Boy, there better be a
Those two
crown.
are in JPAC.
Crown
It's in Timbuktu across the pond
of
and
thorns.
Yeah, I've already got that one. I feel like I'm wearing that one pretty well.
careful,
Careful.
careful what you ask. Give
Okay,
you a crown.
well, so is there anything else any of the 4 of you have to offer up that you want to sync up on before our next meeting, the 13th?
I would ask that you carefully read the Aaron Doyle weekly memo. I put there's a letter from me to the Ways and Means Committee. So I just want to call your attention to that, and we can discuss it further on the 13th.
That'd be great.
I do have a question, Tom.
Go for it.
Tom, it didn't dawn on me before the chair just made a comment about pro tem, and since there'll be 4 of us out of town, we should have somebody. And should we, this isn't a regular meeting, but I guess we could call it and tell me your
Well,
thoughts.
you can't call a regular meeting now.
No, so how are we gonna do it? So, I mean, we could call for a regular meeting now.
I'd have to check. My recollection of the emergency procedures is that it's the county administrator, and if she needs something, then it could go to a board. The board obviously can't act through one person.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it would be the county administrator, and I think
Okay.
she's gonna be in town.
Perfect. That's all that.
But also, I'm the only one that's out of country, so all of you are probably reachable by electronic
We are.
means, so
We are.
Yes.
I think it'll
I
be
still want
fine.
it to be you and me.
I will be available.
Careful, that's all I'm gonna say. We can step back. We can all step back and say,
I want a new office color.
I'm sitting here being next heat dome, I'm going out of state. How's that? See
Yeah,
if
you
can
got,
find
you were
it
the one that
now.
was.
How about a one-day pandemic?
Oh, God. We have those periodically, it feels like.
Okay, well, speaking of into the future, we have rolling agendas for the months through the end of the year. Our staff will be, we are encouraging our staff after we get the budget adoption Tuesday, June 20th. Well, our finance team will have to close the books in time. I remember the ringing of the bell exercise. But it would be a good time for everybody to just take a nice deep breath, right? Enjoy the week of Independence Day without any board meetings. And we have been marching along really with incredible discipline since we adopted the budget last year and went on summer vacation. So I know we've been digging deep into topics since last September and onward. And a few of those we said, well, we're focusing on budget, so we'll deal with that in the second half of 2023. Well, that's kind of catching up to us rather quickly. So our staff under Ms. Angie and Mr. Carr will be convening over the course of this summer with different people having vacations at different times and collecting all those things up. And hopefully by the 1st of September or so, they'll have a good draft of how things are laying out. And we can take a look at that. I do appreciate that each of you has looked at your vacation plans. And I know I've looked ahead. I don't plan to attend the AOC full conference myself. I'm only going to go down for the business meeting.
In November.
Yep, in November, so that our staff has the sequencing. So take a look at what we've got for June and July for sure, so you know what's coming in the nearer term. But I'd like to draw your attention to our roundtable plan. So we do plan to have one on July 13th. That meeting may be a little bit light, which isn't a bad thing. August 3rd and then September 14th we'll be having our meetings. And the 3rd of August and September 14th will be a little bit different because that's when we're going to follow up on our desire for the board to review our county strategic plan, reaffirm different policies, possibly making some adjustments to sustain us for a good couple of years, particularly as we continue to go through what is expected to be difficult budgets next year and the following year. And before we have the result of the comprehensive community strategic plan program. So just notice, please, that the September date is different. We've not had an August meeting in a while as well, so that's a little bit different. It's going to be quite a big gulp when we catch up with ourselves in September. In October, we're not going to WEFTEC this year. I think that was a good call, Diane. Thank you. We will have our roundtable on the 5th and 2 CWS learning days that are already set up for October 12th and 13th. Then Commissioner Treese and I are going on vacation at different times in different places. And I've also talked with the CAO, and we know we'll have topics to go over that. November 2nd, we'll have our November roundtable. November and December is when we start getting organized for the next year. We may have to push some of that into January as things go. We have Commissioner Willie's vacation, but I have looked the number of board meeting weeks that we have through those months to make sure that we're continuing to get to all of the policy and program decisions that we need to before the end of the year. December is only a 2-week business month, which, wow. We'll also, just like this past year, have a CWS Learning Day and our roundtable. We also will be delivering our CAO annual review then. So it's busy, busy times. And I do have some miscellaneous notes for myself, like at the September roundtable, we'll sync up to see if we want to slate any, have any board town halls for the remainder of the year and so forth. So. Yes,
Could I ask a question?
yes, of course.
September 14th. I have a hold for a CWS meeting. Is that's gone?
September 14th.
September 14th. It says
The team was trying to brief something. On
CWS board and CWAC joint meeting.
Is that the
Could be.
barbecue in the evening?
Oh, that could be the
Cook Park.
Cook
Sounds like
Park.
it.
Yeah, that's the.
September 14th.
So that's the same day as our roundtable, but it's in the evening.
Mhm. Yep,
I was just checking.
but we should make sure that's on the rolling agenda for September 2. Okay. So thank you for paying attention to all that stuff, everyone. It helps our staff make highest and best use of our time. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add. Oh, Commissioner Fry, I noticed in the June roundtable, the June rolling agenda, too many R words, that you're not going to be here on June 20th. What's up? That's the day we adopt the budget.
I'm not sure what you're referring to, Chair Harrington, but I will be
Our
here.
packet,
I think it
the
was
rolling agenda for June. BCC out of office.
we'll fix it. Must be a clerical error.
Okie dokie. Okay. Anything else on those? for now?
We're talking about November 14th.
Yeah, November 14th. We don't have that board meeting on the calendar or the work session, so we'll get that.
Well, staff will figure it out.
Yeah, we'll take care of that.
I don't know why. November's just right tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. That's it on that. Oh, I'm sorry, I confused myself. Diane, was there anything on the updated board initiatives from CWS that you wanted to highlight? I didn't really.
No, there wasn't anything new. We were reported on the progress of the things that we completed and then identified the fourth quarter things that we're still working on.
Okay.
But we centered on the learning days. It's really great. So no Halloween. The team is disappointed we couldn't play with you on Halloween.
No.
But And those days work well.
Oh, and it looks like the one you're asking for in December, you're looking for a half day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okie dokie. Great, great. Alrighty then. Then we can move on to our legal update and next steps discussion.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. I have a little PowerPoint, which I'm sure they'll bring up in just a second. And like magic, it appears. So this is very bittersweet for me. As you all know, that I'm planning to retire on September 1st. And I care very much about the county and the office. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about transition. My job is, and Ms. Angie's jobs are unique in that you appoint us. And I guess Mr. Moore as well. So this is one where you have the decision, and I wanted to present some ideas and some options for you so that we can get started on this process as soon as possible to try to make the transition as smooth as possible. So I'm here today to sort of talk about this. As I said, it's bittersweet. It's been a great honor and a privilege to work with you all. I'm not leaving yet. I've got 3 more months left, but I wanted to tell you that and to tell you that this is not easy. And although it's joyous in some ways, it's sad in others. And so I'm going to go ahead and start before I start crying. And so the point of today's presentation is to discuss some options and present 2 of them that I've come up with. But of course, this is completely committed to the board's discretion, and I'm advising only about what the options are. Option 1 would be to commence the recruitment process as soon as possible with a target completion date of October 23rd, 2023. And also actually the hiring date would be that November 14th meeting, which you were just talking about not being on the schedule. The second option in my recommendation is that you bypass that and appoint Deputy County Counsel Brad Anderson as the county counsel. And the reason I'm raising that at this time, of course, is if you tell me that's going to be your intent, we can formalize that through a minute order at a meeting, but we can start the process of transition in terms of hiring and doing things that are necessary to transition earlier than the end of the year. So but let me walk you through what these look like and then answer any questions. And of course, as always, feel free to interrupt me whenever you like. So option 1, this is what the timeline looks like. I took the 2020 to 21 recruitment process and just laid out the dates starting today. Because it looked like in November 5th, 2020, the board had a roundtable where you discussed the county council hiring process and set it in train by directing staff to hire a consultant and go forward with the process. So you can see the steps. There are several board meetings, executive sessions, and then a regular meeting, as I said, on November 14th. The October 23rd date would be the executive session holding the final interviews. Now, it's important to note for this process that you can have executive sessions when you're hiring an employee, but you can only have those executive sessions under the public meetings law if you've posted it publicly and had an established process and allowed for public input. So if you choose to go the other way, you cannot do that in executive session, which is one of the reasons I'm talking to you in public today, because we cannot do an executive session unless it's part of that process. And if you decide to have that process, then you can see I've suggested 3 executive session dates for interviews, which basically mirror what happened in 2021. So this would be the option. My guess is if you go through this, if you're proving a contract November 14th, 2 weeks notice, you're talking November, end of November, possibly the beginning of next year before you have somebody on hand. Earliest would probably be the end of November, unless we could take some steps out of the process. And this is assuming things work well, and we don't have a consultant hired yet, so that process would have to be accelerated. But just wanted to lay that out for you so you saw what it looked like.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
When you have given us a date of retirement, is that the date that you'll be paid through, or is it the date you're actually leaving? A lot of people have 2 or 3 weeks of accumulated vacations. They actually leave about a month before they actually.
That will be my last day of work.
So you'll actually be here through.
On September 1st. I will be here.
Okay,
September 1st.
all right. That's important to know.
Yeah. And I'm working to make sure I don't have any vacation left by the time, right? It's always been my goal.
You don't want to donate anything?
He's been really good about role modeling
Yeah.
for the rest of us.
Taking vacations. And I will tell you that I was gone. I sent very few emails, in large part because I can get the email to work on my phone, but it was better than.
It's okay. You've gotten us out of pinches before when you were on vacation and pulled over to the side of the road and took our calls. So no.
That was
no
always an
worries.
option.
Yeah.
It was people were very kind. So the other option is to appoint Brad and Mr. Anderson. As you know, he's very experienced. I want to say a couple of things. You know, he was in the process the last time, and you selected me, and he was then faced with helping me transition in, and he was really magnificent in that. He could have shown regret or dissatisfaction. He could have made my life difficult, but he chose to do it best of the county and did a tremendous job of taking a lawyer who was new to Oregon law, new to the whole process. And, you know, Brad has an amazing number of connections in the state, having worked here so long, and he helped me build the networks I needed to be able to do my job and to help me transition into the office. So he is a recognized expert on healthcare law. He speaks nationally. He's practiced in almost every area in the office and has done an amazing job of helping develop the office. For the last year and a half or so, he has participated in management of the office. When I appointed him deputy county attorney, he was assigned attorneys to supervise. He participated in the budget process, and we meet weekly to manage the office. And that last point, the deep institutional knowledge, that's not to be overlooked. Brad, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to Brad and say, why? I see what they did. Why did they do it? And he remembers. And they use him for that throughout the organization. And it's something that's going to have to somehow be changed, but it's not going to change soon. And keeping Brad in the office is crucially important for the whole institution, not just my office, our office. Benefits office stability, retaining the institutional knowledge, and provide a smooth transition. I always say that having taken over 3 different major law offices in my career, it's like jumping on a bus that's moving and trying to steer it. And because you can't ever stop. The business goes on. There are emergencies virtually daily. As you know, I've been happy to provide some transparency into what we do, and I appreciate the board's attention to those issues. Retaining the institutional knowledge, but keeping the transition smooth, and assuring folks that tomorrow is going to be much like today. And I will also say that I to some extent have changed the institutional philosophy in the office a bit. I mean, I have great respect for Alan Rapplier and the things he did, but I do have a different philosophy. And I've been really encouraged to see that Mr. Anderson has completely bought in and is practicing the same sort of management that I do. And I can't comment to what was done before, but I really appreciate the things that he's done. So I think the transition, if you choose to go that way, would be smooth.
How do you encapsulate or put into words through brief phrases or whatever, what that philosophy process, whatever is that you've practiced?
Management.
Yes.
Yeah, I often joke that I coached baseball for 10 years, and I'm not sure whether coaching 12-year-olds helped me manage lawyers or managing lawyers helped me coach 12-year-olds, but the skills are the same. You build trust, reliance, you treat people with respect and honor their talents, and try to stay out of their way and provide them support.
But I think there's, from my vantage point as a member of this commission and as chair, the communication and relations that you've had with the board has also been very helpful to us as we continue to provide policy and investment direction to continue to evolve the county in terms of its practices, structures, and accountability.
Well, and
that's been appreciated.
I really appreciate the board's interest. When I started, I assumed the board would not be interested in a lot of the things that we do, but it turns out that you are. And it's always interesting to sort of share with what's going on. And we, as you know, have our fingers in many of the pies of what's going on in the county, because they often need a lawyer. So a lot of times I tell you things that are actually being done by a wide group, a whole team of county employees. And I really do appreciate the interest.
Well, you're part of that cross-functional team.
Yes.
It also appears that the morale in your group is, given everything that they've been through, and is good. I appreciated, for example, you bringing the team in, the entire team, everybody, and introducing us to them, and going through that discussion several months ago. Just that was fun for me. I enjoyed it, and I think it gave them access to us as well. So I would hope that as we move forward, that approach is going to be continued. I also hear some stories about some parties, some events, some other things that happen after work hours, of course.
Yes, there are occasionally things that happen after work hours. So I think these are the two options. Obviously, you don't decide anything at a roundtable, but I'd love to hear a discussion and to get some guidance about what I should be doing in terms of my immediate next steps. If you choose option one, I will work with Ms. Angie to retain a consultant and start the process and do my best to support it while I'm still here. If you choose option two, I'd prepare an agenda item. We'd have to get a contract done. We need to review the job classification. I looked at it, Chair Harrington's suggestion. It seems to be in pretty good shape, but I think we could probably tweak it a little bit to make sure that the job classification truly reflects what the board wants in its county council. So I think that would be something I would bring back to the board as an option to sort of to update that. So what's the board direction?
Well, I appreciated our conversation that you met with each of us, and I appreciated my opportunity to talk with you about it. And I think I have a great deal of respect for Brad. I think he can definitely step into the shoes. And I think for me, an issue that you presented that I really hadn't thought about was twofold. Number one, it's difficult to hire somebody right now of his caliber, or of the caliber required for this position, I should say. And it is unusual to have somebody in-house that can move into that position. So I'm going to be supportive of moving forward with Brad.
Any other commissioners?
You know, I will share what I shared with you. But first, I like your bus analogy about trying to jump on it. In my business, it's not that way. People are trying to get us to fix things that happened long ago. So try to do that. That's always fun when it's all past due and long since expired. In the accounting world, which Jerry would know about, if you don't provide opportunities for people to advance, they don't stay. And in today's market, in all the professions, there's a huge absence of people who are creative and can do the kinds of leadership activities. And I don't suspect it's any different in yours. I mean, we're seeing that across the board. So if you don't give people an opportunity to go move forward, if you don't give them an opportunity to be recognized for their hard work, they will find that recognition elsewhere. And so to go out and spend $30,000-$40,000 on a consultant to only end up with somebody worse in terms of qualifications, it is really not a good ROI in my opinion. So I've always thought Brad is capable. I think a good guy, and I would only hope it's just for me talking, that your management of the office, I'm not talking about role modeling, vacations and fun and all that. I'm just talking about the actual activities that you would spend some time with him, and you're open. I think you probably are already, but so that he wouldn't struggle with that part. I mean, being a good lawyer and running a practice are two different things, and you're running a practice. You know that really well. So that would be my only ask. And I'm all in favor with moving forward with Brad.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if,
Commissioner Fye?
yeah, if he's on to jump in.
Yes, Chair Hudgens. Thank you, Jerry. Tom, I'm in support of your recommendation to move forward with Brad. You know, as I shared with you, I think Brad would have been the obvious option had he not competed with you, Tom. You just came in with a really extensive background in not only just attorney, but management and people development and meeting with culture and meeting with equity. So I think that was the dilemma then for me. I think right now, taking that away, I am very comfortable to be working with Brad and to collaborate and to see him lead the county as the lead of the county council. So I think Brad will do well. I don't see any reason. I predict it will be wasted for the county's time and money to repeat the process. I hadn't realized when I was reviewing the materials that you shared before this meeting, I hadn't realized that there's been a 2020 board conversations about the hiring. I thought it was the beginning of it and didn't realize the amount of time the board spent, even though they were also managing COVID and crisis. And so I'm in support and don't see any reasons. I agree with you. Brad was part of that process. We've seen his resume. We've interviewed him. He went through that background and we were very impressed. Just the competition wasn't balanced. So I'm comfortable and I appreciate you recognizing. I think that was one thing that I was concerned to make sure that Brad is the path is laid out for him to step into this role has come to this day. And I appreciate you doing that and position him to take over. So I'm in support.
Yeah, thank you, Tom, for this presentation. And I am also in support of your recommendation for this. I will be asking, just to give Brad a heads up, I would probably like to have a conversation with him about next steps and where he thinks we should be going and those kinds of things. I think we can probably arrange that at a 5 o'clock meeting someplace down on Main Street here. So I'll be reaching out and do that. But thank you for your recommendation.
So I appreciate all the comments that have been made towards this, and I support this as well. But one thing that's really important for me in my comments today is that I see Brad flourishing with this opportunity, with this position as the general counsel for Washington County, not only in the role, but also helping the team flourish and helping the organization flourish. I see that in him. And I have really appreciated how he has added value to the role, the team, and the organization as the general counsel's office has continued to evolve, as the organization has evolved with new board members, with new management, with new practices that are applicable for a county of our size and of our diversity. And I continue to see him as playing a pivotal role in all of that. I also thank you and the other team members for helping us appreciate his depth of knowledge and influence in the legal community, in county government, and in working with many parties on legal matters that pertain to our work as a county government, because those aren't shoes that we walk every day. One thing that I'm hopeful that I and/or we will have the opportunity to hear from you and Brad together before you depart for your well-earned retirement is what might we be mindful of as we continue to face challenges into the future. Yes, we have budgetary challenges, we have service level challenges, but the legal department is in some ways just like government relations and having a front row seat when it comes to what decision-making has occurred in the state legislature that involves either unfunded mandates or measures the voters have passed, and forging through all of that. It's the level of state direction, even from the voters, is a little bit more than it's been in prior years and decades, and it affects us. You know, measure 114, measure 110, you know. So there's been a lot there, and the legal department has been helping all departments as well as the board navigate all of that. So, and I have to say, I on my own time on social media have subscribed to multiple Facebook posts about bicycling in the world and bike camping and bicycling for people over the age of decade X, decade Y, decade Z. And so now I'm getting these ads for this bike jersey that say something along the lines, I took a screen capture to share with you about, yes, I'm retired. My job now is just to cycle every day or something to that effect. But it has, every time it's popped up, I've thought of you fondly. So I know that you'll have tremendous fun, and it's a retirement well earned through your decades of public service, just like we've tried to recognize that of so many Washington County employees. But thank you. Thank you very much.
I have one comment to make that, it's been my experience when you're in any organization, when a position is filled from within and it doesn't open, that we may experience some feedback from employees. We may experience some feedback from the community at large. So I just want to make sure that as we move forward, it sounds like we're all very supportive of this.
Yep.
I think we want to make sure we're communicating Brad's strengths, the fact that he's worked here for a long time, has had experiences with different people along the way, has this wide depth of knowledge about issues that affect the county. I just want to make sure that we are being proactive in talking about the opportunity that we have in bringing Brad into the role, so that his transition is not at all difficult for him either. So
well, we do have to actually ask him to take the job, right? Go through the contract negotiation so that and so he feels appreciated and wanted and all of that.
You're absolutely right.
So
I'm
we'll
just
be able to announce that we are pleased to hire.
I'm just anticipating that if I want to make it, if in fact he accepts this, I want to make sure that his transition is easy and that we're recognizing what signals we're sending to the community at large as well.
Appreciate that. I did ask him.
And he thought about it?
He thought about it, but yeah, he's excited about the opportunity. And what I will do is, if I can find some time on a work session, bring back the job classification for discussion, and then do an agenda item appointing him and directing negotiation for contract, and have another one for approval of the contract in the next 3 months.
I have one really quick question too, and a very short answer, hopefully by assuming that all goes well and he takes that position. What kind of lawyer are you going to hire to fill a gap? Because you're probably going to move people around, I suspect. And is it easy to find a municipal lawyer to be in the department today?
No.
No, not easy.
No, it's not easy. And I've had some thoughts about that. What you traditionally do is you offer the workload to the in-house attorneys, the ones currently there, as an opportunity for growth. And so that's what we'll do. And various people will pick up various parts of Brad's portfolio, and then we will hire what we need based on whomever we take up. And we've got so many really good attorneys, and we've got people who do one thing and they do it very well, but a lot of them are interested in doing something else. And that's the way you grow in your career. So
And do you think, if I can interrupt you, that by the time you leave, it's September 1st, that you might be able to participate in the hiring of a new attorney?
I'm hoping to, yes.
Good. All right.
That's one of the reasons I wanted to do this early so that we have the chance. I don't know, it always depends on the process, but yes.
Perfect.
And Brad came to us from a smaller county
Yeah, When did Cook County?
Lane,
Lane?
and.
Lynn,
Lynn County.
let's get them confused, Lynn. No.
Yep, and there
Yeah.
are, I've worked with lawyers in other agencies and seen lawyers move from state to other agencies just to practice something different. So it's like any career path. So wonderful opportunity. So great. I just wanted to make sure that we're making sure Brad doesn't feel like we're taking him for granted in any way, shape, or form. We're so excited.
He does not feel that way.
Yay! Excellent.
We actually spent some time talking about whether he should be here today. And he thought it might be easier for you if he was not here. So he's sitting upstairs watching. So he's heard all these.
Good for
Hey,
him.
Brad, how are ya?
I would be, if I was on Zoom, I'd be using that little emoji with
Yeah, heart.
the confetti and, joyful. So, yes.
Well, thank you all very much.
Great.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Tom. And thank you for helping us in the coming weeks go through the necessary and appropriate steps that we should. That'll be great. Good. All righty. Well, here we are with Finance Department overview. And this is one that I'm looking forward to. I know I'm going to struggle a little bit because hearing things, oh, good, he does have a handout for me. I'm such a visual person. To give my colleagues a little background, we have had we have a great finance department. Oh, get those one down. But I'd like us to have the opportunity to learn more about what does it mean to have a county finance department structurally? What does it need? We've been running the business, right? Approving contracts, all kinds of things, budgets, you name it. But we haven't, as this board, stepped back to say, okay, so what is our finance department and what's your vision for the finance department? And so this is our just taking a pause with all of that and asking you to walk us through it all. So I hope I've given you sufficient background for everyone as to why we're doing this today.
I thought you were going to say something.
I was just gonna say, and it's not as though Greg hasn't had a lot of airtime recently.
Not sure if that's good or bad, but thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about our finance department. I don't often get the chance to do this, but I love to do it. And I'll try not to cry either. Sometimes when you're talking about people and relationships, it tends to get a little bit emotional, and it does for me. So today I want to give you my vision of a finance department, and I want to do three things. One is to give you the context of what I see as a finance department in the role of an organization, and also to provide some well-earned recognition to my staff and for the chance for you to get to know them, and to do that all with a sense of brevity because we don't have a lot of time on the agenda today. So with that, I'm going to give you an overview, and really where I see the finance department fitting in the finance shop is we are really linked closely to the organization's goals. So the organization has a set of goals, a set of strategies, things that it wants to complete And to do that, you have to allocate resources, and that's usually in the form of money and people. So that's where HR is connected really closely to finance. But to allocate resources, your first big need is the ability to build a budget and to allocate those resources. And we all know what that's all about because we've been knee deep in it for a while now. So that's the one component I want to talk about is budget. And I'm going to have Steve come up and talk here real quick. The second one is once you allocate resources is you have to have a mechanism to purchase things outside of the organization. You have to have an agreement system, a contract system, a purchase order system, an arrangement that says we're going to pay you for certain things in the county to actually help us walk towards those end goals that the board has or the organization has. Then thirdly, we have our operations area, and that's where we pay people and we buy things and pay for services. So we have an accounts payable department that spends money in the community and allocates those resources, those hard dollars out that were budgeted. We also have a receivables department that brings dollars into the county. And all of that flows through any excess dollars we have that we received is managed in our investments portfolio. You know, we'll have a few statistics for you that might be interesting, I think. So we have dollars that are held in reserve. They might be held in contingency that you've seen in the budget. Well, we invest those dollars in the market within our investment policy. And then last but not least, all of this we have to keep track of all this because granting agencies, governing boards want reports back on where those dollars went, how much did we spend compared to budget, and so forth. And also we have a grants function, particularly around ARPA, that is really heavily into that. So that's the last piece of it. And as we maybe 6 weeks ago, we had a recognition ceremony for our accounting group that received the ACFR award for the 38th year, I think. So that's really the end of that cycle. The very last part of that cycle, which gets outside of normal finance, is your performance measurement. So how do all those dollars invested, all of those monies spent result in outcomes in the community? And then that's the strategic plan that comes back to the goal setting and it becomes a cycle. So that's trying to keep it to 2 minutes, but what I'm going to do is have two folks come up here each at a time and we'll walk through some of the highlights with each of those areas.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is for that ERP, will it touch all parts?
So I'm glad it's in my notes to mention that, but I forgot to.
Okay, no, oh, okay.
So overarching all of that is our ERP. It's our accounting system. Everybody in the county is going to touch the ERP in one form or another.
I'm gonna have to learn something new, huh?
Yes, you will.
So it's our systems that help us do things electronically instead of on paper. That's kind of a simple way to look at it.
Okay.
I'm running into my brevity here a little bit, but we just hired our ERP business systems administrator. And this position will actually be the consultant, the trainer, eventually the person that helps us all do our jobs better, helps us all with our workflow. How do we find ways to do things?
Where's that person fit?
That's under business systems support. If you look under Ethel, business systems support, and you'll see business systems administrator.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the component that ties all of this together. Thank you. I almost forgot about that. Any other questions for me? Okay, Steve.
I have one. You don't need to answer it today. You can answer it privately. Finance department and CFO are terms that are starting to disappear for people at your level doing what you do. Do you think that adequate? Because he's doing more than just, he's doing some treasury functions, he's doing a number of things other than financial analysis. He's doing some IT and procurement, and he's doing a whole bunch. Some call them coups, but that might be a little different title than you want to use here. It's a corporate title. So at some point, I'd like to hear if that finance department, treasurer, CFO, is that a good title for you? You don't have to answer, just to me.
think about it.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Steve and Susie.
Hi, welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Steve King. I'm the budget manager for the county, and to keep it short and concise, I've written up what I was gonna say. So budget office consists of 4 staff, myself and three other analysts. And our primary function is to oversee and manage the county's budget. And that involves 2 processes, budget development and implementation. In terms of the development, we collaborate with the county administrative office and the county departments. And that process involves the assessing financial needs, forecasting revenues, allocating resources to different programs and services. And once the budget is adopted, we also monitor the budget throughout the fiscal year to ensure expenditures align with the allocated funds, and works closely with the departments to address any budgetary issues or adjustments that may arise. And another function that we have is the financial planning and financial analysis. And we engage in a long-term financial planning to ensure county's fiscal stability and sustainability. And we analyze revenue trends, expenditure patterns, and economic factors to make informed financial decisions and projections. We also provide in-depth financial analysis for the county's executive leadership to assess and identify areas for improvement and recommend strategies to enhance financial management. So we also have other duties as assigned, and those are forecasting revenues for general funds, discretionary revenues. And we also manage budget system and also get involved in the position control along with the HRB, the human resources business systems team. So we're currently going through the budget transformation led by Greg, and to bring the county's budget process to meet standards recognized by GFOA, which is a nationwide organization whose mission is to advance excellence in public finance. So for example, this year we worked closely with the departments in implementing internal service funds for most of the old support services divisions, which were in general fund in prior fiscal years. So in summary, budget office is a critical role in the county's financial management, providing strategic guidance, maintaining fiscal responsibility, and facilitating effective resource allocation to meet the needs of the community. With that, I will hand it over to Susie.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So it's not just develop and implement the budget. Part of what you described in terms of monitoring, doesn't your group also produce the quarterly management reports?
In terms, we produce some reports, but our plan is to, so Greg has indicated that we provide some forecast to actuals, so budget to actuals reports. So eventually we'll get there. But currently we provide a mid-year estimates and the year-end estimates.
Cool. Great. Thank you.
Steve.
What's your background?
So I come from City of Tigers. I oversaw city's budget for about 5 years before that. I have corporate background, worked for Nike and Coke and Sprint, various other finance and accounting background.
And when did you start, Steve?
Here?
Yes. When was your start date, Steve?
End of last July. So it's been 10 months, 11 months.
Quick ramp.
So, and you also, your team produces this, is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
And
That's just one of 3 volumes.
and I just want you to know that when we're done here, I'd like you to autograph my copy. And I just kudos to you and your team. I had the opportunity to get to know one of your team members on a girls volleyball trip. And it was really interesting to me to talk with her and understand the depth of what goes on in your department. So thank you for all of the work, and we especially feel it right now. So
Thank you. I don't want to take all the credits because of the county's departments provide most of the information that's in the budget book. So, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Hi,
Steve.
Susan.
Hello, good afternoon, Chair Harrington, Commissioners. Susie Fulcher, I'm the procurement manager. I've been before you a couple of times, bringing the procurement rules usually. Procurement is a division of finance, and there are now 7 of us, so I call us the Magnificent Seven. We do a lot of good work. We recently hired a coordinator to implement the Construction Careers Pathways Program. So we're working on that, working on goal setting, taking on a lot of equity roles that we have not historically taken on. So exciting new work. But in addition to that, we have the work that we've always done, which is the solicitations for the county. And just to give you a quick number, since 2019, that workload has increased 120%. We went from doing like 89 solicitations a year to we did 209 last year. Part of that, luckily, we went live with a new digital solicitation system, so that helped us be able to be more efficient. But with the changes we've made in the rules, a lot of the work that was kind of done out in the departments has come into our department to make sure that's done correctly with equity. Kudos, if my team is watching right now, to my team, because they do an excellent job. They work hard, process a lot of contracts. We're up past 700 already this year. So, and this is just the beginning of for what us is the busy season. The end of fiscal year, we do a lot of contracts and amendments. And we touch all of those at least 3 times. So lots of processing, lots of making sure that things are getting done and getting done correctly, following the rules, the state statute, federal guidelines, and any grants, things that people, want to throw into their stuff. So that's us. Any questions?
Can I just make a comment? I just want to commend Susie, your leadership and the team's work on establishment of the construction pathways and building equity into our processes. We don't get to best practice overnight.
Yeah.
This is going to take iterations to get there, but we have to start somewhere. So I just appreciate your team realizing that it has to be incremental so that it's sustainable over time.
Thank you.
Great.
Any other questions?
Is there anything about procurement here in Washington County that is different perhaps from other counties?
Most public agencies do things differently. Multnomah County is centralized, so everything goes through their central procurement, which is good because they have complete control, but also they have a much larger, obviously, staff. I think Washington County has a good mix of, we call it a hybrid, centralized, decentralized processing.
I was going to ask a similar question. It's interesting, but you asked that because you ever benchmark against the private industry, and how do you think you do in terms of your practices and procedures versus a private entity? Because I know you must have trade groups to work with and you have private members. And so are you similar kinds of practices? And
we don't do a lot with private industry, honestly, because it is so different. I worked for Hewlett Packard for a while, and I remember going out to lunch with the vendors, things that you just don't do now, or I don't do as a public servant. So we don't benchmark against the public. We benchmark sometimes against our other agencies. How are they doing? How many people is it taking them to do this or that or time? But not so much against private sector.
yeah, thank you, Brent. Disappointing, because I think that absent the lunches and whatever else you might do, and we have a little different reasons for doing things. You can always learn from every industry. It'd be nice to see how it might be different, if at all.
Yeah.
From
It's
Intel,
very different. I think we have a lot more restrictions. We have people that come from the private sector into the county, and there's sometimes a steep learning curve on the things you can't do. I just can't walk out and do this contract and sign it, even though I'm the manager, because I don't have that authority. So there is a big difference from private to.
Are there any local associations that help you and folks in your field learn more about best practices or comparisons to the way others are doing it, to ever be mindful of efficiency and effectiveness?
So for Oregon, the two major Oregon Public Purchasing Association, which is statewide, and then we have the Columbia chapter of the National Institute of Governmental Purchasing. Both are chapters of NIGP, but Columbia chapter is more localized. Washington County, City of Portland, Multnomah County, Clackamas County. And we get together and we share solicitations and we share best practices and how are you doing this? When the cat tax came out, how are we going to handle this? So we do absolutely rely on each other in those organizations. And then nationally, NIGP does a great job of educating and helping. I don't make them, but I encourage my staff to take the trainings because there's a lot of good information that does, cover, even though it's national, it's good for Oregon. So.
Well, I will say from my vantage point, I get a real kick out of, a lot of what your group does, if it rises to our level, we see through the consent agenda. And I get a real kick out of reading the kinds of contracts that you put forward for different county services, as well as for clean water services, since we're the board of each, and seeing how, because of the nature of our business, they're so different.
It is, and it's always different. I mean, the pallet shelters, that was a standard goods for me, and then it became a thing, and it's like, oh, that kind of thing. So there's always something different. So that's one of the reasons I love my job.
Neat, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. What's
you.
next? Color.
Oh, good afternoon, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. I'm Amanda Buersworth, the Finance Operations Manager for the Finance Department. So my group of few but mighty basically bring in all the money, record it into our ERP system, and we send it right back out in one form or another. So the statistics I'm going to mention are from 2022 calendar year. Can't see or read with my glasses. So in accounts receivable, we took in just over $1 billion. So I have a mighty staff of 2 in AR, and they review all of those allocations to make sure that they are being recorded properly. Out of that 1 billion, excuse me, is transient lodging tax. As you know, we take that in at the 9% county tax. Overall, the tax collected, or the total funds collected, was 16.5 million, where 5 million of that was retained in the general fund. Accounts payable reviewed over 60,000 invoices in that year of one person and one variable hour. So, and that totaled $618 million. We have 425 purchasing cards in 22. We spent $5.1 million and we earned a rebate of over $118,000 back to the county from US Bank on that spend level. And most importantly, payroll. We have soon to be 3, and thank you very much, because our payroll has just grown crazy amount. In 22, we paid 2,529 employees for over 193 million. And that includes paying employees, federal, state, local, the new paid leave Oregon, this new state transient tax, all of those, as well as PERS. I have one payroll specialist that manages all the PERS for all of the county. For future retirements, as well as USERA military leave. It's a very complex and a lot for one person, but she does it well. And we had, out of all of those payments for the year, only just over 1,000 paper checks. Everybody else is on direct deposit. So that is really good. And we processed 352 terms in 1 year. So that's finance. So we have, including myself, 7 full-time employees. I have 2 retirees that have come back as variable hour. Wouldn't be able to do it without them. And we have 1 temporary agency staff helping us as well.
So when people pay their payroll taxes or their fees or building permits, do those transactions flow through the finance departments?
Yes, so all funds in all departments flow through one way or the other. We do have an armored car service that goes to like the justice court because they're so far, the sheriff's office, just because the nature of their work. They come down here to assessment and taxation because of their volume with taxes, and then to finance. But then all the other departments flow all their money to finance, and we deal with, process all of those and review them all and pull all the data for the external auditors every year.
Wow, wow.
Same with same for invoices. All county invoices flow to my one staff member who reviews every single one of them before the payments go out.
How long have you been with the county?
The county since 2009. I've been working in public service since January of 1992.
During your time here, have you ever seen an internal auditor?
An internal, yes.
Okay, from the, from like, what was John Hutzler's department? Have you seen, and what did they do? in your
A
department?
finance auditor or a program auditor?
Well-
You're asking about the program auditor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yes, the former auditor as well as the current auditor, I've met with both of them. I've been, when Mr. Hutzler's one, the biggest one was the audit of employee reimbursements, especially I think it was the board, if I remember right. So pulling all of those types of documents.
I just wondered what your experience was.
Yes.
Because we're a customer, and I just wondered if it was.
Yes, and I've also been through, unfortunately, an IRS audit as well when I was at the city of Tigard. So,
See a tiger too?
yes,
Down there.
Wayne Lowry, Mary Bruce hired me back in 92.
I know both of those.
Yes, I've just been following them around. I was at City of Hillsborough after City of Tigard.
Wow.
Well, so, but when our financial auditing firms come in and do internal audits, they look at our process controls and things of that nature too.
They only do it so that they can opine on the fairness. So they really don't get into any depths. And that's what I was always trying to get John to do, is to look at the depths of the procedures to see if there was economy and efficiency, which he told me I couldn't tell him what to do. And I said, I'm not trying to, I just think that has value. So anyway, yeah, but
Well, I'm used to those financial auditors looking at the control systems in place
they
as
look at the
well.
control system, but they don't make recommendations unless you want to hire them to do that. And so,
Okay, got it.
interesting.
Speaking to efficiencies, and I'm going to speak to Amanda just because we've had this conversation before. Amanda and team looks forward to the point in time that we do look at our business operations and process, Roy, and modernize with a new ERP system. There's some opportunities to reduce the staff additional steps, both with a new system and then also changing some of our practices. So I appreciate Amanda's leadership in identifying some of those areas already and also looking ahead to the future. And this will be my 5th ERP implementation in my career. So just
You.
thank you.
So you know how it needs to be done. Thank you. Hello. We've gotten to see the two of you somewhat recently as well. So
Yeah.
welcome.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. For the record, I'm Ethel Gilyaris, Deputy CFO. If you look at the org chart, how we have structured it is Greg actually handles outside facing activities. So he's got budget and procurement and everything else comes to me. So controllership, business system support, which we didn't have a staff until recently, but it's actually on loan from ITS because finance is a lot of systems. We do need system support. And I think over the years, we have lost some FTE. So for right now, we have a variable hour employee who is a retiree, but she is actually retiring officially. So I will need another person. But yes, so for us, we have operations. Amanda have that and financial reporting. Roger is supposed to be here, but he cannot be, so he sent his apologies, and he's also retiring. So, but grateful he will stay with us until the end of the year, so kind of to help us with the year end as well. So financial reporting and operations is mine. So I think I'm tasked to speak more of the treasury side. So we have one staff. And again, for being a 1 billion organization, she sees everything, all the receipts coming in. So, well, if we start with treasury services, she coordinates with all the department what comes in. So she sees it on our bank statements. She connects with departments to say your money has come in and how that's recorded. So that is a daily thing. So she looks at our bank accounts daily. We only have one person to do that. So that means if she's out, Roger and I steps in. We have a very skeletal resource for the treasury side. Also, we monitor everything that goes into our state pool account because everything is pooled. Everything that is transfers, wires, ACH, there's 5,000 of that every year. Of course, we prefer that everything goes electronic in our normal processes, but there's always going to be external ACH and wires. So that's the treasury services. Bank services as well, of course, flows into our cash management. So that means any requests for opening and closing bank accounts. We help departments to do all of that. Any other banking solutions, electronic payment options, credit card, we ask the departments, of course, go to finance first. We help them with those. What else? Let me go to my notes. Tax turnovers, of course, is huge. We've got to partner with A&T, and we handle the distributions for those. So that for our very high receipts, we do weekly turnovers. Outside of that, it's monthly. So we send it to all of our local jurisdictions. For investments is, of course, huge. Again, we're a $1 billion budget organization. We also have close to that much in our investment, which I'm very, very happy. It dipped for a while when the market was crazy. But yes, we manage our relationship with our consultants. Of course, we need to be in the investment policy. Of course, we're regulated as to how much we can invest in our core investments to short term and all of that. So we look at that. So anything trades and interest earnings, that's all recorded through our treasury side. And of course, we do some cash audits. So anything on our petty cash, the till, the cash drawers, we do something annually on that one. Very minimal, because again, we only have one employee. So we cannot do a whole lot on that as on the bandwidth. So that's the treasury or cash management side. For grants, and I think I'll have Josh speak more about the grant accounting pieces, but for finance department, the grants we manage are the federal ones. So nothing departmental related. So that means the CARES Act, ARPA, and ERA, the emergency rental assistance. So that is managed under my team. So we only have one employee and one limited duration to help out on that one. So anything that's not specific to a department and federal related is under finance department. And the grant accounting piece, I'll turn over to Josh.
Okay, good afternoon. My name's Josh Saletz, and I'm the chief accountant for the county. I'm also the lead for the management accounting work group, and I supervise 2 accountant twos. And our primary responsibilities in our work group include the year-end financial reporting and audit, GL and chart of accounts maintenance, bank reconciliations, capital asset reporting and tracking, the federal grant reporting that Ethel had just been discussing, and basically managing the budget for the county's 3 debt service funds. And so as far as the year-end financial reporting goes, probably the most popular report we put together is the Washington County Annual Comprehensive Report. That's the largest one, but we also put together the statements for 4 of the county's 6 component units, and that includes Service District for Lighting number 1, Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District, North Bethany County Service District for Roads, and Urban Road Maintenance District. And part of the year-end financial reporting and audit is we coordinate closely with our financial statement auditors, and we're the primary liaisons between the auditors and other county staff. And as far as GL and chart of accounts maintenance, we took that over recently when one of our FTEs retired. That is the limited duration Ethel talked about, and she's officially retiring permanently on Tuesday. So basically, there's 5 individual segments in our chart of accounts, which you may or may not be familiar with, but it basically goes fund, program, account, reporting category, and activity. And right now there's 5,500 plus unique fields that are active that can be used in any number of combinations to create a GL transaction, to record a transaction.
Okay.
And our group also prepares and reviews about 15 bank reconciliations for county-owned banking and investment accounts. And as far as capital asset reporting and tracking, we annually report on slightly over $2 billion of capital assets. And that's comprised of about 12,500 individual assets in our system, of which approximately 10,600 are infrastructure assets, which includes roads, bridges, signals, that type of stuff. So mainly LUT. There's a lion's share. And then federal grant reporting, I have one accountant that works with the departments, and they put together annual grant surveys and reconciliations that ultimately gets combined for the counties to report the county's total federal expenditures in our schedule of expenditure of federal awards that's published with all of our other annual statements. And for fiscal year 22, our total federal expenditures were just over 142 million, and that included approximately 100 separate federal grants. And then the last is the debt service fund budgeting. So our group prepares the annual budgets for 3 county debt service funds, and in doing so, calculate the debt service need projections for the next fiscal year. And so with the 3 county funds, they're servicing approximately $155 million of overall county debt, and 13 million of that is related to the housing authority.
Okay. Thanks for mentioning that, because I was wondering, you mentioned a few different federal grants, but I have heard about federal grants that our housing authority deals with, HUD grants and things like that. LUT gets various federal grants, usually on the transportation side. So,
Yep.
Oh, yes, that's right. Sheriff's office, but also the DA's office.
Oh, yeah.
Does that quote unquote get handled just by the departments, or does that come into the whole finance department's world as well?
The departments do all the programmatic reporting.
Yeah.
And they'll do quarterly reports for financials, but as far as the annual reporting and what gets reported in the schedule of expenditure of federal awards, they send us all the information, and we go through it with them and review it to make sure it's accurate.
Yeah. Okay.
Everything flows to finance.
Eventually.
We
Yes.
see it, but the only thing with the grant cycle, if it's not departmental related, that's the only thing we handle, from pre-award to managing the award and reporting. But we have so many federal, as you mentioned, we have so many cognizant agencies that we 70 plus. We're using 100.
Well, it's 100 separate grants, many of which are under the same agency.
So, so for me, it's my stats here, then this was just taken end of the year for FY22, it's 70 plus federal awards, and that's spread across 209 programs. So it all does come to us, 140 million, but we're only responsible for the CFA reporting, the federal reporting components. Most of the programmatic are theirs because we don't know it. They have the expertise. So it's definitely shared because it's a huge reporting requirement. So but everything flows to finance. This is the whole ERP. It definitely, there are so many interdependencies with each of my teams. So departments to all of finance teams.
I'm gonna ask Josh a question, but I think you're gonna defer to Ethel, and she can refer
Possibly.
to Craig, and he's gonna more to Tanya. I know how it works. In every system I've seen on the municipal side, your IT is lagging in terms of new technology, and finance, from my experience, is always a lean team. Always, you cut seems like that area first until you run into fraud, abuse or something else, and you want to, and then you want to add them back because you have a problem. But can you kind of give me a description of where we are with the IT functions? Do you think that you're up to date with what we use at the county for transactional activities in light of what the private sector is using and where we're going? How would you characterize it?
You know, I'm newer
Don't look
here,
over
so
there.
I
She
can,
doesn't-
so I
she's not
can
here.
say. So I'm newer, so I definitely can compare it with what I've seen outside. So there's nothing wrong with Oracle. It's actually a great system, but how it's implemented is a little different and it's not fully integrated for me. So there's a lot of manual processes around it. So they know because I ask a lot of questions and I say, why don't we do this? So yeah, definitely there's a lot of room for improvement. I want it to be fully integrated because that's what the system is for. It's really full. I would say the right word is full utilization of the system, because I don't think that was carried through. So in an implementation, there's always, of course, you start with the basic, the bare bones, and then you move with a second phase of really fully utilizing it. So therefore you move away from the manual processes. I think we stop short there. So there's a lot of room. So, but when it comes to the IT infrastructures, probably IT should speak more of that. And they're saying it's also time for us to definitely also move to.
So how do we get away from that manual entry as you're talking about component in your mind? Are you short on staff, short
Oh my
on
goodness.
implementation?
Yeah, we'll have a lot of savings, time savings, and definitely costs as well if we have, fully functioning system.
But what's
This
it gonna
is-
take? Yeah.
So I would dive into
Yeah,
this. This
please, go
is
ahead.
where our organization needs us to invest in more powerful systems and in the direction so that they can implement these more automated systems in order to then experience the level of efficiencies and effectiveness and reporting that we're looking forward to having to better inform Ms. Angie's management decision-making and our policy and investment decision-making.
I do want to flag, Roy, we'll be having this conversation when the ERP system comes back to the board I'm hopeful within the next few months, which will include business process change to get to the point that Ethel is raising. It's not worth investing the money in the system if we don't maximize the system. And so that includes process redesign, change management strategies, which the team in finance has been heavily involved in this, as well as others in designing how do we build that out? Because it's not just a tech system, it's also people. We need to maybe make some changes.
And when Ms. Angie and I had a finance department lunch with them, I heard their excitement and they're so looking forward to making the changes because it's clunky for them and they can see where there's opportunity to do the job more effectively, and they're dedicated public servants. So yay, we're getting on course to make those investments and empower them. And I'm grateful to hear, Amanda, of your past experience because I know it's going to be challenging to continue to keep the organization moving as you transition. But it will be a tremendous investment moving ahead. Thank you for helping me learn more about it and understand it.
I agree with all that, and I'll give you one tip. I talked to these two people. It sounds like Tigard has a lot of extra people that we. And he's mentioned two around here are retiring, so it sounds like a really good idea.
So if I may just make one other comment, I think we've heard, from Ethel and Josh, just their level of expertise and just deep financial knowledge, and that really runs through the team. I do want to highlight Roger Dawes, who's not here. I'm going to talk about someone who's not here very openly and just express deep gratitude for his long runway to retirement. And he did that due to commitment to the team in Washington County and to public service. So just by giving that long runway, we'll be able to make a very smooth transition. So I just want to openly acknowledge that.
Thank you, Angie.
Out of all of you, all 5 of you, is there a question you wish we had asked but didn't? Or 6 of you, I'm sorry, Steve. No?
I'm just excited with the ERP investment. That will be really great for us, but yeah.
I have one, the other ones I should have asked, do we not have the capability to do a lot of investing internally? We don't have anybody of that background, huh? We've never employed anybody like that.
Judging from the cost of an FTE, investing it internally versus what we pay our consultant, I think we got some savings there. We could. I think Greg has a lot of background in investment. I'm actually newer to it and learned a lot. So my 2 years, I love it. And I work very closely with GPA. Just on a cost perspective, I think it's probably a cheaper option.
Because I know what the costs are, but you don't know what the hidden costs are because there's always a different it's kind of like buying a car. There's hidden costs. The dealers get the kick. So you guys, you see what they're charging you. You don't see what they're getting paid on the backside, but that's okay.
I see.
That's okay. That's all right. It's not important. I just curious.
I would love to learn if,
Well, I just want to say, I thank you all for coming and bringing the finance department more to life for us, or to light is probably the better way to put it. Are there any other board questions? I know we haven't been shy about asking questions along the way, but is there anything more from any of you about the whys and hows all of the magic happens and through the finance department group?
2 questions for Greg. One,
There's another mic over here if you want to pull a chair
I've
up.
asked this privately, and I would share that with the board. Once upon a time, many centuries ago, in a land far, far away, the board used to get some capitalization almost monthly of activities, and it was at a very high level. So we never got down to 5,000 accounts because that was not where we wanted to manage that, but we had something. Are you, as I've shared, I've always thought the board is a part of the internal control system, should have some analysis. Are we ever going to get financial statements that is more regular other than a budget and a book and an annual audit? Because those are all dated stuff.
So that's a great question. And that was one of the #1 items that is on my list to be able to provide the board. And my goal is to do that monthly eventually. We actually went through an exercise with IT to determine how we could provide that. There's a specific layout that I like to use when doing this. I did this at Deschutes County. We weren't able to pull that together with the resources that we had, so we had to postpone it, and we'll be looking at it again after we implement or maybe even before we implement the new ERP.
Yeah. And then are you going to have a manageable report every year other than I'm sorry, I was going to call it CAFR because I'm so used to it, and we changed it.
It took a lot of learning on
I
our part too.
Are we going to have something that's more readable to the public?
Yeah, so we received the GFOA report for the ACFR.
Okay.
So we'll be moving, to answer your question directly, to what's called a PAFR. It's a popular annual financial report. I know you know that. And so that will be, probably an 8 to 10 page glossy document that will really synthesize our financials down to something that's digestible, what's most important, and make it easy to understand. And in addition to that, on the budget side, we'll be moving towards a budget document that meets the GFOA award standards. So, and to win all 3 of those is called the Triple Crown. So we'll have a triple crown here pretty soon. So that's part of the direction we're going. Thank you for the question.
How does what part of finance does the capital improvement plan touch?
That's mostly going to be in budget, the budget office. So as we build our capacity and our expertise, we'll center that more in the budget office, similarly to how we have Steve and the 3 analysts there, including myself, that essentially assign ourselves out to the entire county for specific purposes. So everywhere in the county, there's somebody in the budget office with some level of expertise in that department, so we can help those departments. And one of those components is the capital improvement plan.
But part of the capital asset management that you spoke about, Josh, there's a connection there, right?
So that would be the tail end of the process, right? So that whole workflow.
Yep.
Once it's planned, spent, and then it goes on our books and becomes part of the capital asset register, so to speak. And then those dollars, a piece of those dollars every year come back in depreciation against our government-wide financial statements.
Yep. Cool. There's a lot to managing a county. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else?
No, thank you I just appreciate taking the time to listen to us. Most of the time, folks don't want to listen to accountants too long. But I'm glad I appreciate you having the time to do that. And for my teammates for being here to step up to the microphone and actually talk about what they do. So.
Especially in light of everything else you have going on right now too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work.
Thanks.
And now that it's June 1st, do hope you get a summer break. At least holiday long weekends. So terrific. All righty. So I wanted to touch on budget sync up before we go into tonight's meeting. I know I finally caught up with the question and answer document that was finalized last Thursday, but somehow didn't get on top of it until today. It's full of very thoughtful responses, a couple of other documents there. Greg sent us a table to the whole budget committee about amendments. I'm not quite sure what the budget committee chair is expecting tonight. So
Has she been briefed at all?
So yes, we did have a short conversation about the potential protocol for walking through tonight. And I think she's prepared and ready to go. I think she pretty much already understood it, but she had a little check back to make sure that's what was a reasonable approach to proceeding with the committee tonight.
I had a question on the table sorry, I forgot to bring the hard copy.
Is this the table? 'Cause I
Yeah.
had
Awesome.
printed, if that's helpful. Yes.
Yeah, would help me. Terrific.
And we had them printed on a little larger than 8.5 by 11.
Oh, yeah.
So not squinting.
I know, it's also ugly.
So on things like proposal number, in your proposal number column 10, 11, 10 and 11 especially, though I thought there was. Yes, 10 and 11, thank you. I've entered this, played devil's advocate on this myself, Greg. So I had originally envisioned that both of these dollars were just materials and services specific to what we need done. And I hadn't thought about the cost allocation back. I'm assuming that cost allocating it back just messes up all the department budgets too. So that's why I get perplexed in splitting this off to other funds. So rather than just not understanding it myself, I figured I'd better ask.
I can give you a 10-second answer if you'd like.
Well, just no, don't limit it to 10 seconds. I'm really struggling to understand it.
So any costs that run through an internal service function will get allocated out based on the allocation methodology of that fund. But that doesn't necessarily mean that these costs have to run through that fund. They could be funded elsewhere independent of that internal service function. So the way these were presented was through the CAO's office, which the CAO is an internal service function and allocates their costs. So any new dollar costs that come through there is spread throughout the county. The general fund picks up a portion of it and other funds pick up the balance of it. But a project could be funded straight out of another funding source, for example, SIP, and it wouldn't hit the indirects. It wouldn't be allocated out through the cost allocation model.
Well, that's what I was proposing originally through 7A on the revenue side. So
I think that could certainly be part of the conversation tonight with the budget committee, and definitely.
but then I feel like we're just getting into a how of implementation that is finance direction, and it's a bit confusing. It gets down into sort of like the technocrat, and it's like on one hand, I understand that, okay, if you have a couple of contracts for 10 and a couple of contracts for 11, that finance touches that. But if all the work is being done out of the CAO's office, why point backwards? That's just seems weird. Highly technical term, weird.
The internal accounting piece is not part of the budget committee's responsibility, though.
Yeah.
Correct. I mean, I think this is something that needs to stay within the staff and answer questions that you may have, but I don't know that it's going to be productive tonight.
It just detracts
from your purpose.
So the budget committee could decide to fund this project, this work, this budget line item independent. It doesn't have to be funded through the CAO's office. It could be funded independent of that from if the budget committee decided to use, for example, SIP. It could be funded completely out of SIP dollars and not roll through the internal service cost allocation plan. It could do that. That's a possibility.
Couldn't we also do that independent of the budget committee?
Yeah, the board can.
Yeah. So that's my point, is that I think that this is a decision that is an internal and a board decision. It seems like it just falls outside of the purview of the budget committee. The budget committee makes the decisions at the 40,000 foot level or the 30,000 foot level. And then I want to make sure that you're comfortable with how you follow the money is what I think you're talking about here.
Well, I know what I intended.
Right.
In proposing the amendments. So
are you comfortable that we can do that internal?
I'm hoping. Well,
so what I hear is a request to not to direct the CAO to determine how to not have 10 and 11 hit the cost allocation plan through an internal accounting mechanism, and I can work with the CFO on that.
I don't see the value of doing that. That's what I'm questioning. I don't see how that helps us. That's the ultimate question that I have, and I can't seem to settle out that question for myself. It just seems like a bunch of mumbo jumbo. That's all.
Are you comfortable that we can do this? That you can make Catherine comfortable?
I'm just not gonna raise it tonight. That's all.
Okay.
And hopefully I'll get resolution on it by June 20th.
I think that's what I hear Pam saying too, and I would probably agree with that. Gets down into the complexities that probably I doubt that our budget committee members would understand, even the conversation as to why are you doing that one versus the other, unless you've looked at the internal service fund and understand how that works. So basically, in this particular case, we're removing or we're directing about $950,000 of expenditures to not be accounted for in the internal service fund calculation. That's what I'm hearing. We're going to go direct to the SIP account and not do that. Is that what I heard? Okay. The only question I have to this is that it says in your explanation, Greg, that over 2 or 3 years on the 800,000
Services fund. That's
and
why.
over
That's
2
a
years
question.
on the other one. So why are we taking 100% of that hit in one budget year? It seemed to me if it's over 2 years, it'd be 475, not 800 and 150.
So I think that's a good conversation for the budget committee is,
No.
does all of it end up in?
Why did I propose it that way?
Well, I think the deal is, and this is like number 10, we're not going to spend 800 in 1 year. So why
Correct.
budget it all in 1 year?
I know, but I didn't want it to just end up being up for debate again next year and jeopardize what the outcome is that we're looking for. And that's why it's not useful for the budget committee to ask itself the question and try and answer it on its own.
So how do we typically budget for projects that extend over one budget year? I mean, we can't do earmarks or we can't do whatever. But if we don't spend all 800 in 1 year, we can't carry over either.
So first, I want to go back to the chair's question. Why would this be handled through the cost allocation plan? The increased organization strategic initiatives capacity, increased capacity for community strategic planning. Those aspects, if I understand the intent on the amendments, touch all areas of the county. And the purpose of the cost allocation plan is to spread cost out throughout all aspects of operations. So a true cost accounting. So that is the why behind that. Then as far as how we account so that we have, in essence, rollover of operational expenditures from year to year, that is something that Greg and I can figure out from an accounting perspective and budgeting perspective. This was just highlighted last night during, was it the earned? Like in the budget showing sidewalk costs within the budget. In essence, that would be the same for carryover of these project costs from year to year.
They were special funds, so they can dump those into contingencies and carry them over. We don't have that ability.
It can be done through accounting and budgeting.
Okay.
Yes, it can.
I have a different question if this one is resolved. Yeah, that's what I don't want to.
I'm not going to get resolution today.
Okay. My question is, we have 2 amendments that were tabled. What is the process there? Number 1A and number 3.
So the reason number 1A was tabled, right? You got to go back to the meeting and the discussion. 1A was tabled is because it's a individual board of commissioner decision.
So there's actually a decision.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And number 3, I chose as the proposer to table it and take it out of the budget committee purview.
Okay,
You can decide to make a motion to withdraw it.
I'm just asking, I'm just raising the question. It's, you know, if we're comfortable, if it's tabled, that it doesn't have to be discussed again, I'm fine with that. But I think it does.
No, I mean, if the meeting adjourns with something on the table, it dies.
Okay, then, okay, thank you.
Or you could
That's all.
make a
didn't
motion to
understand
remove it
that.
from the table and reactivate it, but
she
unless
could-
that motion's made, then it's.
Don't
You
want
could
to.
also,
I don't want to, thank you.
Okay, that's the answer.
For the offer. That's fine.
I have 2 or 3 points after you get done with yours tonight.
I'm
I'm
done.
done.
My 2 or 3 points are this, I had to go home that evening and I just don't like driving late at night with eye problems, but there is some philosophy issues that, yes, we won't take tonight, that's at a budget meeting, it's not necessarily appropriate for them. But I think you've got a bigger issue that you're going to go to hopefully adoption later this month. And you might have 1 or 2 commissioners who vote no. I don't think that sends a good message about where we are in terms of acceptance, because there's some issues that we need to chat about, and I'll be quick with them because I think we can do that.
That's one reason why we have this on the agenda today.
Okay, that's perfect. And I talked with the chair, so she kind of knows where I'm going on a couple of things. Before I get there, Greg, you've done a terrific job, and my last night question was not meant to put you in an awkward position, but as you know, and you answered Jerry's question well a minute ago about contingency, I was surprised to hear that we were budgeting multi-year projects, shoving those in as current year. And I know you'll clean that up. That's not in conformance with state law. And so we can't be doing that stuff. And so I just wanted to explain that. I wasn't picking on you or anybody else. I was just saying, no, that's not possible. We couldn't be doing it. So that was last night. In regard to some philosophy issues, and because I'm more of a short timer than anybody here by far, I'd like to see us tackle some complicated issues. Some of them we've tackled, I brought up in the last couple of evenings. I had to do one was in Pam's area, which was last night, and she and I give her credit. She kind of brought it down to the nub of what it was, but there is policy issues on things that we keep on budgeting. We don't have revenues for, and we need to have some philosophic talks about that. I don't know when those are going to happen with this budget or next budget. In regard to number 3, number 4, and number 5 on Catherine's list, those need to be talked about at some point. I mean, we can't just keep kicking the ball down the road and hope it goes away. I mean, as I understand it, and she can correct me, if she's saying if it's not countywide, why are we doing it? And my only minor pushback is you don't do it all at once. You have a glide pattern, but we need to send some statement this year that we're not going to continue, and that'll give them ample time. And I'll pick on one of my own area, Metzger Park. You can't just take 98,000 out in June of 2023. They don't have time to raise their LID fees and all the rest. So, but you give it to them, and say, okay, not next year. So I'm hoping that either at this budget committee meeting or at the board level, that we're going to start saying this is a philosophy that we're going forward. In regard to number 9, broadband, Jerry, I like broadband, as you know, but that's an arbitrary number, $2 million. What's it going to buy? I don't know what it's going to buy. I haven't heard that. We all suggest. In regard to Commissioner Fai's comments, she is saying we have a number of dollars that she would like to look at, and it's kind of like the meetings we had with our folks on the Aloha site. I think Jerry and I were saying that night is, let's hear it everything, and then we'll come back with a position paper and say, I don't take any of this personal. I've heard lots of bad comments of the mayor, and then I'm over the years here, and he's kind of say, we'll take them down, we'll answer them, and then we'll move forward. But we need to have some specificity on 9, and we need to have some information in regard to Nafisa's comments about, is there any CBO sort of activity. And now she's refined it, talking to me, it's not CBO, and she's saying, well, what kind of business activity resiliency are we talking about? And is there any money? And if there isn't any, we just need to flat say that and say what our position is. But I think there are policy issues, and I'll get off my soapbox here in 2 seconds, but I think there are policy issues that we really need to chat about, because if we don't now, when? I mean, I guess a year from now, I mean, that'll be my last whack at it, but they're not bad. They're not bad to talk about them. And what I was holding out for on number, why I didn't vote was that number 13. I thought 100 grand, and I understand it's only 100 grand, but a lot of these little organizations are counting on their 500 to 1,000, a small amount of money, and we wean them completely. That didn't go anywhere. Okay, that didn't erode my support for saying we need to talk about the other things. And so yeah.
I'm
Go
not
ahead.
trying to cut you off,
No,
but
please do.
I find some of it a little perplexing.
Yep.
And I'll just start in reverse on on number 13.
Okay.
I raised in our public meetings a couple of different times that because of our fiscal difficulties in this current fiscal year, that I was not programming out the 20K for the board chair, and indicated I had every expectation to continue that so that the organization could better use those dollars.
But you said that singularly, much like we did on the COLA for board members.
And yes, I encouraged all of you to consider that as well.
Right.
And so this board, through the budget committee, did entertain that at our budget committee meeting. If you would like us to take action on some policy decision in a business meeting, we can certainly do that too. We did, Commissioner Willie and I met with Ms. Angie towards redirecting any unspent ARPA funds as of July of 2024 to CBOs for that resiliency point. That's what number 8 is. And that's a policy decision. And so we've taken it out of the budget committee process so we don't have entanglements there. Towards your points on number 4 and 5 of having those policy discussions, I believe I've already done the work in working with Ms. Angie and staff. And as I've mentioned previously and again today, that touches on the August 3rd and September 14th roundtables. So, and as to signaling to externals, we have to go through the board processes for these discussions. So I feel like you're asking me, what business meeting, if I can carry it further, what business meeting is it going to land in the rolling agenda when I'm trying to honor that the board, the full board needs the opportunity to discuss this and then decide what it wants. And if it's a change of direction, then effectuate that policy change. So I'm trying to figure out, per your high level request, how am I not supporting that opportunity at the tactical steps?
Well, and I also,
That's what I'm
I can
missing.
answer that. Okay. Okay.
well, I was just going to underscore a little bit, because I think, Roy, in the meeting, we talked about the fact that we can't subsidize the UUAs, but at the budget meeting, that wasn't the right place to do it, and that we would be committed to looking at that. In fact, that was part of the discussion, and the feedback to the West Slope Library people was it was withdrawn for this year, but we are discussing this in general, not just about your library, but about others. So I think we've set a pretty good pace about doing this. You know, I don't have any compunctions that we're not going to do it. I'm fully in support that we can't continue to subsidize the UUA, but we also have to have the complete discussion, which includes annexation and all the other methodologies that are going to be required to meet the needs of the people that live in those areas.
And I will also say with regard to Metzger Park, I feel like as a board member, I was, to be very harsh about it, I was played because as you may recall, just last month, we were required to act on a supplemental budget item to put in multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars for Metzger Park. And so all the more reason for sending a very clear signal that we either figure out how to charge the full LID for all of its work, or we do something different. So I'm still struggling a little bit between your ask and how we actually implement that, because I feel like I've set that up.
Happy to answer that question.
Thank you. Sorry if I circled the drain again.
I know you're too young, all of you, to remember the old movie where they said, I think we have a failure to communicate. Remember that Cool Hand Luke movie? And that, I have to tell you, by the time I picked back up, we were on just finishing item 4 the other evening. So I did not hear all of the discussions on 3 and 4. But my communication piece is I've always thought, and there's a personal philosophy, that you don't just do something with the board without involving a little bit of the budget committee. And so if you're telling me that between my time of leaving here and getting back on, that it was communicated very well, that this was a 1-year deal.
Yeah, it was.
Then I'm a lot more happy. I assume that what happened is it was just votes on these things and we got to there.
No.
And so a clear statement would be, to answer your question directly, a clear statement that says we have a countywide approach, and those things that benefit sub areas are not things that we're going to fund in the future. And the budget committee is fully aware of that. That's all.
We have, I take a little bit of issue with your
Go ahead.
saying
Go ahead.
we've always gotten the budget committee. In my time here, we have only engaged with the budget committee in the spring. We have never engaged the budget committee with any supplemental budget decisions.
I didn't use the word we. I said, I have always believed that we should engage the budget committee on that. And years ago we did. It hasn't been recently, I agree. But I've always thought you just kind of paste a comment so that they know what's coming. That's all. I mean, a few sentences, we'd be done with the conversation.
Well, you know, I also feel like the issues that we're talking about have been building up over a long period of time.
Forever.
Yes. And I think it's unrealistic to have these discussions in this particular budget meeting, in this particular moment, and expect that we're going to get resolution. That's not going to happen.
I agree with you as well.
But it becomes incumbent upon us to continue the discussion and to continue to work. I wouldn't say definitively that it's going to be, that this is going to happen in 1 year or whatever. We need to have a plan. We need to be able to look to what all of our options are to make sure that we're meeting, again, the needs of the community, as well as making sure that we can pay our own bills and provide the services to all of our community that we're required to do.
Yeah, I take no exception to anything that's been said. Just a direction. Somebody understands at a very high level that there's a direction. So I said what I'm going to say, and everybody's happy with what they said.
Could I also make a comment
Wait,
about your
you made
broadband?
one other point though,
Mhm.
that 2 commissioners will likely vote no. What are you talking about?
Well, we have an opportunity at the board level to vote yea or nay on a budget. I'm getting more satisfied from what I'm hearing now. If we had just walked in tonight, done our thing, and I hadn't had this conversation, I would have felt very uncomfortable. I don't know where Nafisa is. She can speak for herself. I'm feeling a lot better, at least that I know that you were discussing it when I wasn't in transit. So that makes me feel good.
Broadband? Yeah.
Well, the broadband, you asked for specificity around the broadband investments and, you know, that number, correct me if I'm wrong, but
That's why we did
it came
did
from,
the sheets.
it came from our economic development group. And
the
it is,
strategic plan.
and it's also specifically set to be able to leverage potential federal funds at a much higher level. So we did have the explanation. We had the explanation here, I believe, in work session about what was going to be required.
And
So
it was written.
so
What I recall was said is that it was a good start. I like the project, I support the project, but I'm saying, what's it for exactly? Don't know, 2 million is a nice round number.
No, the sheet talked about there are 2 different programs.
Okay, tell me about that.
I will pull up the sheet because it was in the budget committee packet. I also sent it to all of you. We went over it in a work session.
While you're doing that, can we just go to Nafisa and hear her remarks? I think it's important to.
Nobody has stopped her from contributing.
Yeah, thank you, Roy, and thanks, Chair. I don't have anything to add to here.
Okay, that was simple.
I wrote up a project sheet for every single amendment
now where
that my name is associated with. So this is Harrington Willie 12. It was provided in a packet for the May 18th meeting.
I think this is, isn't it this?
That's the table, and there's a whole sheet. Kevin, if you could bring up the May 18th Budget Committee packet. It says, ensure Washington County total communities can maximize the broadband opportunity for the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Think 2 realms: infrastructure, broadband connectivity, programs and services, which includes devices, monthly access, education for access funding, and for device use. For infrastructure, local match to build out Washington County will be needed as non-federalized dollars. And based upon the strategic plan, Matt went through that and said and he's familiar with the BEAD infrastructure program and the other federal program. He earmarked what it would take for the local match. And so he said $1 million should cover that. And then other jurisdictional local match will come in. For programs and services, there are some community programs with libraries and some CBOs in place already, but more capacity is needed. It would be a grant program, and he said it would be just under $1 million. So I said, okay, we'll just round it up to $1 million. The Washington County ECDEV broadband team will work with cities and others to sort out how to apply the local match for BEAD infrastructure grants, and will work with the community-based organizations, libraries across Washington County, and other partners for grant programs to increase the access to broadband devices, monthly access fee programs, and education on use of devices. These are dollars non-federal and not FTE.
And you were financing that from the ARPA dollars?
So since we've never had a process for this before, I proposed a whole set of amendments on the revenue side, which is that table that Commissioner Treese was mentioning, and then on the expense side. So since the items 1 through 6 on the revenue side were essentially all no longer on the table, that meant that on item 7A, that figure needed to change from the original one to now it would be, and I left it on my budget book. If you do the cost allocation model that Mr. Munn is suggesting, it would be 2.9 million, and other funds would cover 361,000. Otherwise, you add those two numbers and it's like 3.4 million. And that would be out of that SIP transfer for countywide programs.
So it was not ARPA money. To answer your question.
There is no
518.
ARPA money.
And for a grant, it needs to be non-federal dollars. So ARPA could not be a match for a federal grant.
Okay.
And, we could just as easily, I'm not sure if that 2 million is 1 year or 2 years, but we could assume it's 1 year and bump it down to 1 million. And you could choose to bump the 800K down to 400. And then we just have the same conversation over again next year. So instead of the contract for 10, and similarly with number 11, and instead of those contracts going out 10 and 11 for 2 years, they'd have to go out for 1 year with 1 year renewal pending budget decisions.
I think one of the most important pieces, and I'm got the same document in front of me that you just read from, and that is that we need the non-federalized money to be able to do the match for the federal money. And if we don't do this, leaving money on the table, in essence.
In essence, yeah.
And that's,
I see
and
your point,
that's.
yeah.
And I think that's why I'd probably push back on the 2 to 1. And the reason why is because this is moving at a pretty quick pace. And I don't want us to be standing there with a check that's $1 million short if we have to have any matching or any of those kinds of things. We could leave the 2 million, and if we don't spend it, it rolls back in and we reallocate it next year, whatever it is. I do agree with you on the 800 and the 150. I think since we've identified that those are 2-year programs, and quite frankly, I mean, if we at least get a snapshot, then we're well into those projects. We can see what it is that we're doing, how we're spending that money. We may want to allocate more to it next year if it be available, but at least we'll be able to see how the half is. I'm quite frankly ambivalent to all of that. I'm okay with where we are, and I'm okay with doing the half on 800 and half on 150, but not on the 2 million.
I think you're right about the 2 million. I frankly, I don't mean to sound so stern. I'm just trying to be clear on what I was proposing and what I was asking for. And on the 2 million, I don't want to be bothered by when the grant windows are open. And, it's, the state Senate's walked out, so that's put in jeopardy our state system, which has to be there for the federal. And it's like, how can I control what I can control, right? On on number 10 and 11, the 800 and the 150, I'm not going to be managing that. That's Ms. Angie, right? So it's like, okay, don't know if we're making the job harder for you, Miss Angie, by spreading, bumping this, dealing with half of the decision today and waiting for the other half of the decision next spring or whatever. But if it makes it easier all around and follows right accounting mumbo jumbo that I don't really want to have to, I want to appreciate, but not get in the weeds on.
I'm comfortable with proposal 10 and 11 as stated. And we will manage it internally.
Okay. And I understand why. Because the folks that would provide for the materials and services contracts would want to know their 2-year contracts.
Well, and the work we have ahead of us with strategic planning, financial planning is not going to happen just in 1 year. So it helps me plan the work out as well. So thank you.
Is it, which finally makes me see the light. how do we, as the board, provide the direction so that those are at least 2-year programs so that the contracts can be let like you do RFPs, but that the dollar accounting follows over 2 budget years? See, this is detailed at.
Can we come back with that proposal? I would not be spending these dollars without it being in a program of work that the board would be aware of. So I would say, I don't have that with me at this point in time, but just be rest assured, it wouldn't be spent unless the board approved the program of work.
But what it does mean for, if I'm following these details, right? That for the purposes of the budget for no later than July 20th, that number, the number 10 would be, thank you, June 20th, thank you. That number 10 would be 400 and the 11 would be 75. Am I correct in that? For this budget year.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I think I'm hearing what you're asking is that part of what we're working on in the budget office is a way to track expenditures that are one-time expenditures and ongoing expenditures, but at the same time, those that are commitments for 2 years or 3 years, or for a certain amount over X period of time. So we'll be able to track that internally as we move forward, which means it'll come back next year as part of your proposed budget.
Yes.
It'll just be built into it.
Yes.
We can certainly do that.
Okay.
I would think this is not something new and unique right now. I mean.
This is not new and unique. I will say very frankly, though, we have not been tracking within our financial system clearly the difference between ongoing and one-time resources. The same issue we are having with our finance system and our HR system not being fully connected to each other and being able to track programmatic cost. So we are on an evolving path to best practice, and I appreciate the finance leadership in helping us get there.
And this is normal. This is normal to be able to track it. So we'll be able to do that.
So, where I think we've ended up is number 9. We approved. I didn't bring my sheet, but the budget committee approved it last meeting.
Yeah.
And I wish I brought that whole packet. And I thought number 10 they did. Oh, yes, they did. That's why it says yes. But are we saying we're doing anything differently?
I don't think so. Unless, Roy, you said you didn't like the broadband piece or these other pieces, but they were voted on.
I didn't understand it, and I think I do a little bit better.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does that mean, I guess I don't understand. I don't think you can bring it back at this point anyway tonight, can you?
No.
I didn't think so. Okay.
No.
So I'm just asking that.
I was simply expressing my concerns. I think
Okay.
we need to do that as members. And
The reason I'm asking is because all your votes were abstaining, and that's why I'm asking.
that night, I didn't hear the first 4, as I've already admitted now. And now then I picked it up and I was hopeful we'd get number 13. We couldn't get there. And so I was abstaining to see where that was going to come back. I
You abstained all of them.
Pardon me?
I think.
You abstained several of them. I
Yeah,
have
I
my
did.
notes upstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I
Kevin
did.
could tell us.
Until we got there. Yeah. Except for one, I didn't abstain, and that was because it wasn't a second. So I made a second on it, so we could at least vote on it. Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. It's a process.
This was just time for us to go over it, so we would have whatever conversation.
I'm kind of in agreement with what Em just said. There's a number of these things that I actually thought we'd already agreed that we would have future communication conversation about. Certainly the library and Van was two of them that are definitely going to be have future conversations about going into, and I prefer we do it before we get into budget season next year, so that we are eyes wide open on what it is that we're doing, and certainly policies on UUAs. So, but
Mine-
again, we're going to give them a heads up way out in advance.
So on the UUA side of things, have I been clear in terms of that's teed up for this summer?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it, but it's a, like I said earlier, I believe it's a wider topic because it involves how do you provide services, not just pulling services, but how do you fix the problem? And that's really, I think, what we're teeing up, isn't it?
And you'll contribute that in those meetings, right? Okay.
Far be it from me not to sit here quietly. One of the things, and I want to go on record right now saying that it alarms me to think that we would have a budget not adopted by unanimous. That I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's a little bit like looking at the debt ceiling issue right now. And I guess I'm concerned that if you think that it potentially wouldn't get 3 votes, or wouldn't get 2 votes, what happens, and I'm going to ask this to Tom, what happens if it didn't get adopted? That's not the point. I think it's really important for me to understand. And also I think that messaging to the community is pretty important too.
You have to adopt the budget, so you'd have to keep trying until you did it.
Yeah, because we don't have a debt ceiling, we have to limit it.
To my point, part of this has been helpful. I think it's always good to have time to discuss. We take votes and we think everybody's happy, and they're not always happy. I learned a lot more from you all today on the Convene. I heard also that you did discuss on 3 and 4, which I didn't know, that whether it was drawn, table, whatever you did with it, that we sent a clear message, and 5 for that matter, you sent a clear message that this would not be a continuing sort of thing. I didn't realize that that's what was being said. And I think that was a message that needed, because I was supportive of that message. So I was there with you. I mean, I thought that needed to be made. Am I still smarting about the number 13? Yes, but will I vote no just because of that? Absolutely not. That's just one item. That's just one item. But I appreciate the conversation. I would hope we'd have more of these. So.
And I'm hoping that our comments on June 20th will not be detrimental to our community.
Of course.
So thank you very much. Is there any other board conversation with regard to the budget? Whether it's tonight meeting or June 20th adoption?
I have one request of you, and I'll make this brief. And I won't pick on the person to my left, but I personally like the days of old where we had that kind of meetings where we didn't have multitudes of night meetings. It would be nice if we could have meetings more succinct and just complete them and be done with it. And I also like just useful. The time certain is always a problem. I mean, if you finish something in 5 minutes, you're waiting an hour. And so we can figure some other plan, just a recommendation. So
Yeah, that was actually just a technical error on our part last night. Yeah.
It was only 14 minutes one time, and I think you 13 another time.
And you've reported on that by email as well as to the full budget committee on that. With regard to, so we were going to bring this topic up at the July 13th roundtable. But since we're here, might as well do it now. I have also reflected on how we made changes to the budget committee meeting times as well as the process for public comment. And for that fact, the Q&A as well. Now go in reverse. The Q&A has been getting better every single year process wise. And I have highest compliments for the information set this year. And I've always appreciated every year, but it just shines. On the public comment input, we now have 2 years of experience. 2 years of experience in allowing public comment in the budget committee meetings. And what I'm realizing is it really depends on the topics in the budget. You know, what are the issues this year? And I think if we have an amendment process in future years, I think we should just lay that out for the public in advance, because that's usually where they have more comment on. I would have to remind myself, what was it that attracted 19 people to testify back in 2020 or 2021? As to the budget committee.
Kevin remembers.
It was the body cameras for the sheriff's office.
It was 2020.
Yeah.
And it was connected to the board budget listening session / town halls and the poll, and asking to divert more money to behavioral health, housing.
Yep.
And so the complexity of our fund, the fund structure didn't come through the simplicity of a poll.
Yep, right. Thank you for that reminder. So, but I think as we have amendments, that's where I think being sensitive to public comment really helps. On the meeting time, I agree with you on the sequencing, so it can just run through. But I have asked myself, well, you know, should we return to the days where the meetings aren't in the evenings? The whole point of having them in the evening was to ensure that more members of our community could participate after normal work hours. We do have Zoom, so for some people that is a placeholder. Right? Some people have access during the workday if they feel so inclined. But not everybody. And I'm reticent to move back to the days where it isn't as accessible for community members to be present. But those are just my thoughts on the current meeting structure. And none of you are required to bring up any comments today, but you're more than welcome to, or, you know, ponder it for that July 13th roundtable.
You know, I guess where we talk about all these things we have to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need when I look at the budget meeting, I don't know what I'd cut out. I don't know the presentations from the departments from, you know, that clicked along. It wasn't, nothing was drawn out, and, you know, that moved along. I don't know where I'd shorten it.
What I would do, just one suggestion, is that, for instance, your special funds, you know, like ESPD and stuff. Why don't you make the presentation, take the testimony, take the discussion, and not have another meeting to follow up, unless there's extensive information needed. So you just finish it, so you're done. And we could probably click a couple of those, but we're having a meeting and then we come back, got a different meeting to make decisions. It just seems like it's disjointed to me. I liked it when we just had it all a day. And if we took a full Saturday, I wouldn't care. I mean, whatever we did, our full day, trying to get public input, but it seems like we're having multiple meetings on the same budgets. And frankly, I mean, I have more people in my neighborhood walking about 5 houses than attend these meetings. So it's, I'm not sure input that we'd have any different, but that's just my belief. And if it has different ideas, so that's fine. That's mining.
For the service district budgets, I think that might make sense, the once and done.
I don't know if I feel the same way about ESPD. And the reason I say this is that I think nationally we're in that public safety debate. I'm concerned about the ongoing support that we need to have for the ESPD. You know, I understand the compressing it. I might be okay with the compression, but I really want to make sure that that's a fully engaged discussion. That's such a huge piece of how we need to operate.
But you could come back. You wouldn't have to plan to come back, but you could come back if you needed to. And there's a difference in planning, right? You plan to say, well, I have to do this on one night and this on another night. You said, I'm planning to finish, but if I don't, that's fine. Just carry it over to one more meeting.
But we have to notice it, so there's the high potential of just canceling it.
I see. what
But
you're
we
saying.
can notice it that way.
Yeah, that would make-
But also, I'm questioning though, how much visibility, we really cover what ESPD is. It's just about the money part. It's not at all about the policy part. I think though, anytime we can provide to the paying public what they're getting for their public safety and justice dollars, I'm all for that. But I feel like we really just end up having similar presentation 2 nights in a row. That's all.
Sure.
I see what you. I agree. I get like nervous twitches when I think about the ESPD. I always have. So just
I don't, because our community values public safety and
they've demonstrated that over and over again. I know.
Yeah.
I would say this to you, Greg, and I do this to you, Tanya, as well, that in all of my years here, I mean, I've seen the process anywhere from, we used to do the whole process in about 3 or 4 hours. So your transparency and what you've brought to us is excellent. So if I pick at it, it's because, how do I say this nicely? When you get a certain point in your career and you want to have some things looked at before you aren't part of that career anymore, that's what I'm picking at, not you guys. I mean, you guys have really done a nice job. I want you to know that. I take no pride in saying that I'm beating up in any way, because it's never been my intention to say, can we look at things different? Because we're still here. Maybe they want to meet all day, every day. I mean, that I don't know. I mean, it's just me. I'm talking.
So Roy, when you had those 3 or 4 hour budget sessions, how big was the budget? I'm just teasing right now.
The size was the same. The numbers weren't as big.
Yeah.
That was the difference.
But there were complaints at CPO meetings
Yeah,
about
sure they were.
how people couldn't attend the meetings because they had to work.
Sure.
And then
Even the location was.
We used to
Not
tell them to take and get on the Zoom calls,
standard.
but they never did. There wasn't such a thing.
Well, the other thing that I appreciate about how we've used the amendment process this year while we were building it is that technical amendments, aren't hidden. You know, there's multiple hundred thousands of dollars of technical amendments. Those needed to get visibility. Those weren't just a slam dunk. And so it doesn't matter where the amendments come from. They need to have the visibility. So appreciate it.
And there will be those technical amendments every year
And
in the
were
budget
they-
process.
And in the past, were they there too?
Oh, yeah,
We just kind of,
Yeah, that's true.
These, most of these this year are related to state. action. So, and I'm frankly, I'm worried about what the state legislature is gonna do and what we're gonna have to regroup on through a supplemental budget. But they may not have clarity until their September 15th deadline. Either way, it's coming. So, okay. Thank you for bearing with us. Commissioner Fye, do you have anything? Nope, okay. All righty then, we are done for today's roundtable. Thank you. See you in a bit.